Brothers and sisters, I promised you that the gold of our land will no longer feed strangers, but our own children. Today, that promise is becoming reality.
Once upon a time, Burkina Faso was known as a land rich in gold, yet poor in wealth. The soil was filled with treasures, but the people remained hungry, struggling for basic needs. For decades, foreign companies dug deep into the ground, carrying away Burkina Faso's gold to other lands. The people saw trucks leaving full of riches, but their tables remained empty. It was like owning a goat that everyone milked but nobody fed. Then came a man with courage, vision, and a heart full of determination, Captain Ibrahim Traoré, the president of Burkina Faso. He looked at the land, looked at the people, and said no more. No longer would the gold of the land be stolen without benefit to its true owners, the Burkinabe people. This was the beginning of what we now call the Golden Revolution of Burkina Faso. This revolution was not about violence. It was not about speeches filled with empty promises. It was about action, leadership, and wisdom. President Traoré changed the rules of the game. He restructured contracts that had long favored foreign multinationals. He gave power back to the state, ensuring that the gold of Burkina Faso would serve the people of Burkina Faso. Where others had bent to pressure, he stood tall. Where others saw risk, he saw opportunity. The results came quickly, and they were astonishing. In the year 2024, Burkina Faso collected more than 8 tons of gold under its new system. That was already a historic achievement. But then something incredible happened. In just the first 3 months of 2025, the country collected 11 tons of gold. Yes, more in 3 months than the entire year before. Imagine that. A country once stripped of its wealth was now filling its own treasury with gold. This was not luck. This was leadership. This was the power of sovereignty. Captain Traoré showed the world that when a nation takes control of its own resources, miracles happen. The goat that was once starving now had a strong owner, and it began to grow fat, healthy, and ready to feed its people. But the Golden Revolution was not just about gold, it was about pride. For the first time in a long time, the people of Burkina Faso could stand tall and say, "This is ours, this is our land, this is our wealth." Children could dream of a future built on their nation's riches. Farmers could hope that their land would one day feed not only their families but the entire nation. Soldiers could march knowing that their sacrifices were supported by a strong economy. The Golden Revolution is more than a policy change. It is a story of courage. It is a story of a leader who refused to let his people remain poor in a land of riches. It is the story of Burkina Faso rising, shining like the gold it owns. And it is only the beginning. For decades, Burkina Faso's story was a painful one. Beneath its soil lay rivers of gold. But the people lived in poverty. Big foreign companies, armed with powerful machines and stronger contracts, came to take what they wanted. They dug deep into the land, carried away the gold, and left behind empty promises. The villages remained poor, the schools underfunded, and the hospitals weak. The situation was like a farmer watching monkeys steal his maize every harvest. He works hard, but when it's time to eat, his basket is empty. This was the reality of Burkina Faso. The nation's wealth was not for its children, but for faraway lands. Then change arrived. Captain Ibrahim Traoré stepped forward, not with fear, but with vision. He said, "This must stop. Our resources must serve our people first." And with that, he began the transformation. He knew that exploitation had to end, and ownership had to return home. He took bold steps that many thought impossible. Contracts that gave foreign companies almost everything were rewritten. The state stepped in with ownership stakes in gold production. In some cases, nationalization was the only answer, and Traoré did not hesitate. This was not about greed, it was about justice. It was about giving the Burkinabe people back what belonged to them. The effects were immediate. Where once the government begged for scraps, now it collected real wealth. The gold began to flow into the state treasury instead of foreign bank accounts. Schools that once lacked chalk now had budgets. Soldiers that once worried about food now had resources. Roads, hospitals, and farms suddenly had the chance to grow. This shift was more than money. It was dignity restored. Burkina Faso was no longer a beggar at its own table. It was the rightful owner of its land. The parable is clear. A goat owned by everyone dies of hunger, but a goat with one strong owner grows fat. Under foreign exploitation, the goat of Burkina Faso starved. Under state ownership, it began to thrive. The world watched in surprise. Many doubted this small West African nation could pull it off. But Traoré proved them wrong. By taking control, he inspired not only his own people but also leaders across Africa. He showed that it is possible to say no to exploitation and yes to ownership. Today, Burkina Faso is writing a new chapter. Children grow up knowing that their gold belongs to them. Young men and women believe in their country's future because ownership is finally in their hands. No longer do they watch others prosper while they remain behind. From exploitation to ownership, this is the heartbeat of Burkina Faso's revolution. It is a message to all of Africa: control your wealth, or someone else will. Numbers tell stories. Sometimes they whisper, but in Burkina Faso's case, they roar like a lion. In 2024, under Captain Ibrahim Traoré's leadership, the nation collected more than 8 tons of gold. That was already a historic victory. But then in the first 3 months of 2025, something astonishing happened. 11 tons of gold were collected. In just 1 quarter, the nation surpassed the entire previous year. Think about that for a moment. A country that once struggled to benefit from its own resources was now breaking records. How did this miracle happen? It was not by luck. It was the result of strong policies, bold decisions, and a leader who refused to let the wealth of his nation be stolen any longer. Traoré's reforms made the state the rightful guardian of Burkina Faso's gold. He set up strict oversight, transparent systems and partnerships that favored the people rather than foreign powers. Where once corruption drained the treasury, now accountability ensured that gold reached the hands of the state. The miracle was not just in the numbers but in what they represented. Every ton of gold collected was a ton of hope, a ton of dignity, and a ton of progress. It meant salaries for teachers. It meant food for soldiers. It meant roads connecting villages and cities. It meant hospitals with medicine. The people of Burkina Faso could finally feel the impact of their own soil. They could see the difference in their daily lives. Pride filled the air. For the first time, gold was not just something taken away. It was something that stayed home, shining light into every corner of society. The miracle of gold production also sent a clear message to the world. Burkina Faso was no longer a victim. It was a player. Investors, leaders, and nations began to pay attention. They realized that this was not just a story of numbers, it was a story of sovereignty. And the miracle continues. If 11 tons could be collected in just 3 months, what about the next quarter? What about the next year? The future shines brighter than ever. For the Burkina Faso people, gold is no longer a lost treasure. It is a living miracle, fueling their journey to prosperity. Great leadership always attracts great partners. And in August 2025, the world saw proof of that in Burkina Faso. On the 27th of that month, Ouagadougou welcomed a very special guest, Abdul Salam bin Muhammad al-Marshidi, billionaire investor and head of Oman's sovereign wealth fund. This was not an ordinary visit. When billionaires travel, they do not come for tourism or leisure. They come because they see opportunity, stability, and potential. And that is exactly what Oman saw in Burkina Faso. A nation rising, a nation in control of its destiny. Al-Marshidi did not come alone. He brought with him a strong delegation, contracts ready to sign, and billions prepared to invest. Most importantly, he came carrying the greetings of His Highness, the Sultan of Oman, and the message that Oman was ready to walk side by side with Burkina Faso. Why Burkina Faso? The answer is clear. Under President Ibrahim Traoré, the nation had shown that it could harness its gold, secure its sovereignty, and open the door for real partnerships. Unlike before, when foreign companies simply extracted and left, now investors came to build, to collaborate, and to share benefits with the Burkina Faso people. This was more than money, it was trust. Oman recognized the strength of Burkina Faso's leadership and the stability of its vision. Where others saw a small West African country, Oman saw a shining star in the making. The symbolism of this visit cannot be overstated. It showed the world that Burkina Faso was no longer begging for aid, it was attracting investment. The tables had turned. This time investors were knocking on the door, eager to enter. For the Burkina people, this visit was a source of pride. To see a wealthy nation like Oman send one of its top billionaires was proof that their country was being respected globally. It meant jobs, technology, and opportunities. It meant that their sacrifices and struggles were finally paying off. This moment was also a signal to other nations. If Oman, a respected and wealthy country, trusted Burkina Faso enough to invest billions, then others would surely follow. Investment attracts investment. Success multiplies success. The arrival of Abdul Salam bin Muhammad al-Marshidi was not just a diplomatic event, it was history. It was a golden handshake between Africa and Arabia. It was the beginning of a new chapter where partnerships replaced exploitation and trust replaced dependency. During Oman's historic visit, 3 powerful agreements were signed, agreements that could change Burkina Faso's destiny. The first was a joint venture in gold mining. For the first time, Burkina Faso entered into a partnership, not as a servant but as an equal. Oman brought investment, expertise and technology, while Burkina Faso brought sovereignty, resources and determination. Together they created a model where gold would benefit both partners, but most importantly the people of Burkina Faso. The second agreement was a comprehensive economic partnership. This went beyond gold. It included trade, infrastructure and industry. It was a canvas on which both nations could paint their future. Roads, factories and businesses would rise, supported by Omani money and Burkinabe ambition. The third, and perhaps most important, was in agriculture. Rice and strategic crops. Gold may glitter, but food sustains life. Traoré knew this truth well. That is why agriculture was placed at the heart of these deals. Oman agreed to invest in Burkina Faso's fertile land, helping the nation grow enough food not only to feed itself but to export to others. Imagine the sight: endless fields of rice under the African sun, harvested by Burkinabe farmers feeding Burkinabe families. A nation that once struggled with hunger, now moving toward food self-sufficiency. This is true independence. Each of these agreements carried more than signatures, they carried hope. They showed that Burkina Faso was no longer trading away its future, it was securing it. When a nation takes back control of its resources, the ripple effects are endless. In Burkina Faso, the benefits of sovereignty can already be seen. First is military strength. With gold revenues filling the treasury, soldiers are paid on time, weapons are supplied, and morale is high. A strong army means a secure nation. Second is infrastructure development. Roads are being built, schools funded, hospitals supplied. Instead of waiting for foreign aid that comes with strings, Burkina Faso is now building with its own wealth. Third is food security. With Oman investing in agriculture, Burkina Faso is moving toward a future where hunger is no longer a constant shadow. Rice fields and crop plantations are rising across the land. Fourth is job creation. Young men and women no longer have to leave their villages in search of opportunities abroad. Mines, farms and industries are hiring. Dreams that once seemed impossible are now within reach. Fifth is global respect. When Oman, a respected and wealthy nation, sends its billionaire to invest, the world pays attention. Burkina Faso is no longer ignored, it is admired. These ripple effects prove a simple truth. Sovereignty is not just about pride, it is about progress. When a nation owns its wealth, its people own their future. Burkina Faso's story is not just about one country, it is about an entire continent. For too long, Africa has been portrayed as a place of poverty and dependency. But today, Burkina Faso is showing a new path, a path of sovereignty, leadership, and prosperity. Other African nations are watching closely. They see Traoré's success and realize that they too can take control of their resources. They too can say no to exploitation and yes to ownership. Burkina Faso is proving that Africa does not need to beg. Africa can stand tall. It can attract investment, form partnerships, and build its own future. This is the true meaning of independence. The message is powerful. A lion does not beg the hyena for food. It hunts its own. Africa, like the lion, must hunt its own wealth, its own dignity, and its own destiny. In years to come, historians will look back at this moment and call it the beginning of a new African revolution, a revolution where nations rise one by one, breaking chains of dependency and embracing sovereignty. Burkina Faso has lit the torch. Now it is Africa's turn to carry it forward.